So we're going to talk about, it's about you actually, because you've been here with Tuscan a long time. So you told me, how long have you been here with Tuscan?
Since 1986.
1986.
And have been here for many, many years before that.
Oh, really?
As a child, my parents shopped in Wetaskiwin a lot, and we attended church in Wetaskiwin. So we were at least once or twice a week in Wetaskiwin.
Oh,
even though we lived in Winfield.
Winfield, okay.
Yeah.
So, in a formal way, I have to go your name first. I forgot to ask you.
Yeah.
What's your name, please?
Phil St. Dennis.
Thank you so much. So think about, imagine yourself when you were young, how Wetaskiwin is like when you were here. 1967?
We moved to the Winfield area in 1963.
Okay.
And so from that time on, we would be in and out of Wetaskiwin for our shopping, for our church, for visiting. And so it's been many, many years that Wetaskiwin has been part of my home. And then in 1986, I moved here and bought a home in 1988.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I had 2 years of renting.
So how old were you at the moment, 1967?
In 67, I'd have been 6 years old.
Oh, 6 years old. Probably, so that maybe Tuscan City probably shape your identity. Quite a maybe impact maybe city itself has for you then.
Sure.
Yeah. So do you remember about the Tuscan at the moment? Because 1960 whatever, how big was the city? Do you remember? You're 60 years old, probably don't remember, but do you know any?
I don't remember the exact population, but I know 30 years ago, I was interested in what the population of Wetaskiwin was, and it was 12,700 people. And that was 30 years ago. So just recently I had a friend that was new to Wetaskiwin ask me, what's the population of Wetaskiwin? And I wasn't sure, and I was curious, so I Googled it, and the population has actually dropped. It's 12,400.
Oh, okay.
So
30 years ago, it's almost how many?
In over 30 years, the population has really sustained itself, but as of late, it has dropped by 300 or 400 people.
Oh, okay.
And I think some of that is due to we are a bedroom community to Edmonton, and many people, if they have worked for a short time in Edmonton and Nisku in the oil capital, they would live in Wetaskiwin and then commute to those areas. And as work dried up or the job transfers, they would be transferred elsewhere, and of course they would leave Wetaskiwin and go elsewhere. So I think that's why our time is up and down. Yeah.
So I think about Tuscan, you grew up, when you were 6 years old, 66 years old, you've been living in Tuscan. Let's think about how city of Tuscan can shape you. Like for example, I've been to many cities. I used to living in Korea, Seoul, and then I spent maybe only 20.
Yes.
So when I came here in Vancouver, in Canada, and changed a lot of perspective about seeing the world and differently, because the world is different. So who you are, I believe, it's hard for us apart from the where you live, So I believe probably city kind of shape you. So tell me about Wetaskiwin when you were maybe a teenager and then only 20. How it look like at the moment in Wetaskiwin?
I've always found it to be a city that was friendly.
Okay.
And that's something that I believe has rubbed off on me. I find myself wanting to chat and talk to people. I consider myself a friendly person, and I think that's due to the surrounding that I live in. There are times I can walk down the street and not know a soul and say hello to somebody, and they very much reciprocate, hi, how are you? And I really, really enjoy that it's a small enough city that we feel like a little town. So I enjoy that part of it. And the other aspect I love, there is nowhere in Wetaskiwin that I can't get by walking. Okay. It's just a few short minutes. I walk to work now. I live on the other end of town, and where I work is opposite, and it takes me 28 minutes to walk to work. So I enjoy that about town, that I can walk anywhere, and I feel comfortable to do so with the people in my community.
Do you know any story about because the story shape you, but probably there's a there's own city, their own narrative. Do you have any kind of story that you want to share right now with us, maybe with me? Any story? Because with Tuscan, I believe there is a peace and treaty as they have made between Cree and then barefoot, something like that. Do you any other story kind of impact you? Maybe another story you kind of carry.
Yeah. There is one. As you said, the name Wetaskiwin is from our First Nations people, and it's Hills of Peace. And I was very fortunate. I want to say 10 years ago, I was invited down to Hobima, which is now Musquatchees, and it was a cultural event that they had, but they invited the Christian community, and I found it very, very different to be in their culture. We were escorted to walk around the town with police escort, and I'd asked, I said, why do we need police? And they said, some of the areas that we're going to is not safe, but we want to make a statement that we as the white people that are living just north of Hobima, just 10 miles away, we are here to support you and to love you and to pray for you. So during that walk with the police escort, I remember walking with many, many First Nations people and a few white people from the area, and people would come out of their homes and wave to us and God's blessings and we're glad you're here. At the end of the walk, they took us back to a hall right in town, and we sat down and we broke bread together, chatted together, and that was a wonderful thing to do that from the perspective of the police saying, we need to protect you and be safe here, and yet we were in amongst them and felt very, very safe and protected and felt God's presence there. And that was a real defining moment for me, for our communities, because there has been struggles between Wetaskiwin and Hobima over the years, and that was a real bringing things together for me personally.
Wow. How old were you at the moment?
Probably in my mid-20s.
Mid-20s?
Yeah.
And what happened to you go there? What made you go there, actually?
There was a friend of mine, a fellow Christian, that was going from another church, and he said, would you like to go with me? And I said, absolutely. There was no question, and we spent the afternoon there and the meal afterwards and just had a really, really nice time with our brothers.
So culture could be maybe different from maybe one that you are in, probably. So
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It was a real eye-opener for me and a real blessing to understand some of their thinking, their culture, and how they relate to what they call the Father, the natural earth.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah. And there was very many similarities there. We call him Jesus, they call him the Father of the earth, but they're praying to God, I believe. And it was very interesting, very interesting for me.
Yeah. So, would you want to say more maybe how they maybe kind of in a story, kind of shape your identity, who you are?
Yeah.
More maybe personal way.
Personally, I think we have some First Nations people that attend church here in the Salvation Army, and I've gotten to know, I'm going to say 7 or 8 of them by first name basis. And for years before that, I was the type of person, I think as many are, when you would see them coming down the street and you could tell that they were struggling with addictions, I would cross the street so that I didn't have to talk to them or to look at them. Yeah. But after going to that in Hobima and them coming to our church here, I've had my eyes opened, and now when I see many of them on the street, they will call me by name. Phil, or Pastor, they will say. One of them calls me Reverend. Hi, Reverend. And I purposely cross the street to be on the same side of the street with them. And it's always been in the past that my thoughts were, they want something from me, they want money from me. And now when I speak to them, it's on a different level, and it's a respect level. They just want to shake my hand. They want to wish me a happy day. Many of them say God's blessings to you because they've been in church with me. And it's a new perspective and a new understanding. And I believe that helps me follow through with other ministries that we do in community ministry, to reach out and to touch others and to have a heart for them. It's really touching to have them come to me and want to speak to me. I had one 2 months ago cross the street. I was in the McDonald's parking lot, and he come over to me and he said, Phil. And I said, yes. He said, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to me. Most people turn their head or they cross the street as I used to and don't want anything to do with me. He said, it means a lot to me that you just take a few minutes to say hi and how are you doing. So I believe that has changed my perspective in how I deal with First Nations and with people in general. Very much so.
Nice. But a lot of young people, actually, even for me, when I was living maybe even the most in big city in Seoul.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to go, the center of the city. I really wanted to go big city. For example, if I live in Vancouver, it's kind of longing for me to go maybe Toronto and find out to be a somebody. We have a kind of desire we have. I don't deny that. But you probably only 20, even maybe 30. You probably maybe any temptation, not temptation, but do you have any kind of you want to go in big city or find job over there and then to be somebody? Because you choose to live in Wisconsin.
I do.
Long time. What makes you stay longer here?
It goes back to the friendliness of the people and the small town. When I left high school, I went to a small school. I graduated with 9 people. And I'm going to say, of the boys, every one of them except myself went to work in the big city or on the rigs because there was big money. And for me, I never ever did that, and there still is not that drive for me to move away or go to a big city. I love to be at home every night. When you're working the rigs, you're out on the job and you're in camp, and that's just not who I am and what I'm about. But I really enjoy that time together with family in the evenings, with my community. When I walk back and forth to work, as I mentioned earlier, that's my time to talk with people in the community. And I try to take different routes. And people see me often on the same route, and they say, I see you here day after day. What are you doing? Where are you going? And it's a chance for me to stop and talk to them. And I've gotten to know probably 18 to 20 people over the last few years that I did not know before, and it's simply because I took the time and wanted to walk and talk with people. So it's gotten now that I have to leave for work earlier than normal because I have to stop and talk to people.
And what time you have to be there to work?
I have to be there for 9 o'clock, but I have to, and it takes me half an hour to walk. So I like to leave 15 or 20 minutes before that because of people that want to chat, and they genuinely want to know, how are you? How's your day? How was the weekend? And I thoroughly enjoy that, and that's part of this community, and I don't want to leave that.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you so much. And then you told me there's not much change, 30 years ago, and then 30 years now, and now it's still the same, or maybe the population has dropped. Do you think why? Because I can find that there is a peace in the place we can go, and then we can find the very peaceful. But why in the city is not growing? Because I want the other people to stay here because I love this city. But why in the population rather than growing? Cameron they grow, and seeing the population actually move into Cameron, but Reduc, compared to here. In the industry area, kind of having more young people in their city, they're growing. But we're not growing though.
No.
So, do you think why? And then, do you have any decay? Maybe you can find maybe anything you can make it better, or you hope that you can see something improvement.
I think. One of the other reasons I mentioned before is some of the people that have lived in Wetaskiwin as a bedroom community, they moved because of job changes. But part of it as well, we've had people on city council for a number of years and have had a vision to keep Wetaskiwin fairly small. And by doing that, they have said no to the many box stores. As you mentioned in Leduc, we have the Leduc Common, we have the Camrose Common, where they have many of the grocery stores. They'll have Tim Hortons, and they'll have the Walmart, and they'll have Arona's, and different anchor stores. And the city has said no to that because they want to keep the smaller town feel. So in a way, it has been both a blessing and not so much. The blessing is I love a small town, and it has kept it small.
I can the benefit.
Yes, and I can drive across town in just a very few short minutes. I don't have long lineups when I go to the stores. The downside is when I do need some certain items, I can't get them in this town because we don't have the big stores that would handle things that I need. So I have to leave to Leduc or Southside Edmonton to get a few things. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's nice to have the small town, but it's also nice to have the amenities, which we don't have because we've said no to some of these places. And as far as the decay of the city, I know by possibly not having some of these bigger stores, it hasn't drawn in other people for employment and possibly to live here. So there has been a time in the last few years when you walk down Main Street, you'll notice that closing out